Story number 1. Whispers from the Unseen. In 2001, my best friend Lily and I, freshly graduated and eager for adventure, embarked on a journey to explore the United States' most haunted locations. As journalism majors, we dreamed of uncovering untold stories. Little did we know, our escapade would lead us into the heart of a nightmare. I was driving my old Honda, which groaned under the weight of our filming equipment, when Lily pointed out an intriguing headline in the local paper: unexplained deaths at the ill-reputed Juniper Hotel. 2 deaths, a week apart, with no apparent cause. "Why don't we check this out, Alex?" she suggested. Always one for thrills, Lily was intrigued by the sinister reputation of the Juniper Hotel, long known as a suicide hotel. Our first stop was a coffee shop where we met Mark, a historian, and June, a local medium. Both under 30, they'd made names for themselves in their fields. Mark had a wealth of knowledge about the area's ghost towns and haunted spots, while June claimed to be attuned to the spirit realm. As I was sipping my coffee, Mark began, "The Juniper Hotel has a long, dark history. In the 1800s, it was rumored to be a gathering spot for devil worshippers. Those rites called forth dark entities." June nodded, her pale face even paler as she recalled. "I was once asked to cleanse the place. The energy, it was suffocating." Deciding to investigate further, the 4 of us checked into the hotel. That night, June conducted a seance. I remember the room grew colder, and the flickering candles cast eerie shadows. I was recording this session when an invisible force suddenly knocked the camera out of my hand. June, with terror in her eyes, whispered, "They're here." From that point, nights at the Juniper Hotel were relentless. I recall walking down a corridor and feeling a cold hand grasp mine. Another night, Lily and I heard distant, agonizing screams, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. One evening, after witnessing a faucet turn on by itself, Mark shared a grim discovery. "I found old records," he said, shaken. "It's said that devil worshippers performed rituals in the basement, offering souls in exchange for power. Those who died in the hotel were the unfortunate offerings. It was our 5th night when the unspeakable occurred. June wanted to perform an exorcism to free the trapped souls. But the spirits of the Juniper Hotel were too powerful. The room we were in shook violently, windows shattered, and amidst the chaos, June began to levitate, her body contorting in unnatural ways. I was trying to pull her down, my heart pounding, when suddenly, she collapsed. The room returned to a deadly silence. June was gone, a victim of the very entity she tried to vanquish. Lily and I, devastated and terrified, decided to leave. But Mark, consumed by the hotel's mysteries, chose to stay. He was found dead the next morning, cause unknown. We never went back to the Juniper Hotel. It was razed a year later, but the legends never died. As I sit here, years later, recounting those events, the weight of the trauma remains. I lost 2 friends to the unspeakable horrors of that cursed place. Lily and I parted ways after the incident, the memories too painful to share. But I often find myself wondering, are the souls from the Juniper Hotel finally at peace, or do they still wander, trapped between realms, seeking redemption? Story number 2. Whispers of Hollow Heights. In the summer of 2002, a chilling adventure awaited us. I was part of a team of paranormal enthusiasts: Emily, a passionate journalist; Danny, our tech whiz with a flair for capturing eerie footage; and me, Jamie, a curious writer and researcher. We'd heard unsettling rumors about the Hollow Heights Hotel, a notorious suicide spot located in a quiet suburb. As we drove into the town, the atmosphere grew thicker, the streets eerily silent. While scouting for local sources, we stumbled upon Ethan, a reserved librarian, and Sarah, an exuberant parapsychologist. They had unsettling tales to share. Ethan whispered, "The town's history is stained with dark rituals and devil worship, all centered around that cursed hotel." He handed over an old newspaper clipping from the 1800s that detailed rituals of summoning demonic entities. Sarah's eyes widened as she heard this. I was recently called to do a reading there. The energies were chaotic. More than just the lost souls of those who ended their lives. Our first night at Hollow Heights Hotel was a descent into madness. Danny had set up cameras everywhere. I was walking down the corridor when I felt a sudden gust of cold wind. The temperature meters went haywire, and an EVP session revealed anguished voices begging for release. Emily started documenting every event, while Sarah attempted to communicate with the spirits. One evening, she decided an exorcism was crucial. The devil worshippers, she said, voice shaking, they did something that bound souls here. They're trapped. Gathered in the most haunted room, Sarah began her rituals. But midway, the room's temperature plummeted. Ethan, who had joined us out of concern, screamed as invisible hands gripped him, pulling him towards the window. I was trying to help when Danny yelled, pointing at his monitor. On screen, a shadowy figure with hollow eyes stared back, mouthing words that sent chills down our spines. You can't save them. The night culminated in horror. Sarah, drained from the exorcism, was found in a trance, whispering ancient chants. Ethan, traumatized, locked himself in the archives, refusing to leave. We later found out he died under mysterious circumstances a week later. We left Hollow Heights with more questions than answers. The footage Danny captured was confiscated, deemed too disturbing. Emily wrote an article, but it was dismissed as fiction. As I penned down these memories, the chilling events of 2002 continue to haunt me. While Hollow Heights Hotel still stands, a silent testament to its dark past, the town around it seems to be slipping into oblivion. I often wonder if the spirits of Hollow Heights found peace or if they still roam, eternally trapped in a cycle of torment, forever whispering their tales of horror. Story number 3. Echoes of Ashford Manor. In the autumn of 2003, my best friend, Sam, and I embarked on a mission to uncover the mysteries of Ashford Manor, a dilapidated hotel in a forgotten suburb, notorious as a suicide hotspot. I'm Ryan, a fervent history buff, and Sam was always the brave adventurer. Together, we'd hoped to unearth the secrets that led to the manor's dark reputation. Our first lead was at the local library, where we met Grace, a young librarian. Her family had lived in the suburb for generations, and she had a trove of old records about Ashford Manor. As I was scanning the articles, Grace introduced us to Clara, an urban explorer, and Leo, a medium known for his uncanny ability to communicate with the spirit world. While sipping on warm coffee at a nearby cafe, Clara shared her harrowing experience. I was exploring the manor last year when I heard whispers, leading me to the basement. I found remnants of ritualistic symbols. It felt as if the walls were alive, watching. Leo nodded gravely. I was once called to conduct a seance there. The energies were overwhelmingly malevolent. Devil worshippers, centuries ago, are believed to have opened a portal, trapping tormented souls. Feeling a mix of excitement and dread, we decided to spend a night at the manor. Armed with equipment, we set up in the grand ballroom. I recall walking through the corridors, the air thick with tension. The manor seemed to breathe, sighing with the weight of its history. As night fell, things took a terrifying turn. Clara's torchlight caught glimpses of ghostly apparitions, and Sam captured disembodied voices on the recorder, pleading for salvation. Leo, attempting to make contact, was soon overcome with emotion, channeling a spirit that recounted tales of being offered in demonic rituals. In the dim candlelight, Grace began reading from an old journal she discovered, detailing the manor's history as a den for devil worship. It spoke of a high priestess who'd masterminded countless sacrifices, binding souls to the hotel. Feeling a surge of determination, we decided to attempt to close the portal in the basement. Leo led the ritual, with Sam and I forming a protective circle. As incantations filled the room, a chilling wind blew, extinguishing the candles. I felt an unseen force grip me, its coldness seeping into my bones. In the pitch darkness, we heard Grace's screams. When the lights returned, she was gone, vanished without a trace. Leo, exhausted from the ritual, collapsed, whispering, "It's done." The following morning, Ashford Manor stood silent, its aura slightly less menacing. But the cost had been high. Clara, forever scarred by the events, left the town, and Leo withdrew into solitude, refusing to practice mediumship again. As for Sam and me, we could never forget that fateful night. The loss of Grace, the echoing cries of trapped souls, and the haunting legacy of Ashford Manor remain etched in our memories. To this day, when I pass by that forsaken suburb, the shadows of Ashford Manor loom large, a chilling reminder of the thin line between our world and the unknown. Story number 4. The Shadows of Ravenwood Inn. 2004 was the year my life forever changed. Fresh out of film school, my friend Kara and I were determined to create a gripping documentary about America's most haunted places. Our quest led us to Ravenwood Inn, an infamous suicide hotel located in a decaying suburb, long forgotten by most. Upon arriving, the towering structure of Ravenwood sent shivers down my spine. With its Gothic architecture and dark windows, it whispered tales of despair and death. We had planned to stay a week, hoping to capture the eerie occurrences the place was infamous for. During our initial scout, we crossed paths with Oliver, a local journalist, and Eliza, a reputed psychic. They too were drawn to the mysteries of the inn. Oliver had been investigating a series of unexplained deaths linked to the hotel's room 13, while Eliza felt an overwhelming pull from spirits yearning to tell their tales. The first night was unsettling. I recall walking down the ornate hallways, feeling watched. Kara, being the more pragmatic one, brushed off my unease until she too heard ghostly whispers in her ear. Our cameras captured shadowy figures darting around, and at one point, an icy hand seemed to brush against my face. Oliver revealed a disturbing find on our third day. "I've uncovered articles dating back to the 1800s, he said, looking pale. Ravenwood was once a gathering spot for a devil-worshipping cult. They conducted twisted rituals in room 13, binding souls to the inn. The pieces began to fit. The suicides, the unexplained deaths, they were all tied to the cult's dark activities. Eliza, sensing the overwhelming despair in the inn, decided an exorcism was essential. I remember the night clearly. Eliza, with Oliver assisting, began her chants in room 13. The atmosphere grew oppressive, and soon, a deafening scream echoed throughout the inn. The room's temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the icy air. Eliza, her face contorted in pain, yelled, "They're fighting back." What happened next was a blur. Eliza, possessed by a malevolent force, levitated off the ground, her voice not her own. "Leave, or suffer," she hissed. It took all our combined strength to restrain her. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. Eliza crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The exorcism had taken her life. Devastated, we decided to leave the next day. Oliver, traumatized, destroyed his research, wanting nothing to do with Ravenwood. Kara and I, our documentary incomplete, returned to the city, the weight of Eliza's death heavy on our hearts. Today, as I recount that harrowing week, the horrors of Ravenwood remain fresh. The inn stands abandoned now, a dark sentinel of its sinister past. Those who dare venture there speak of chilling apparitions and ghostly cries, forever echoing the anguish of trapped souls. And while the world has moved on, for those of us who experience the inn's malevolence, the memories are a haunting reminder of the thin veil separating the living from the damned. Story number 5. Haunting of Lament Lodge. It was a chilling December in 2005 when I found myself at the doorsteps of Lament Lodge, located in a desolate suburb, its tragic reputation preceding it. My close friends, Alex and Lisa and I were young paranormal enthusiasts, hungry to uncover mysteries. Lament Lodge, with its history of suicides and paranormal occurrences, was our newest challenge. Within hours of arriving, we were introduced to Natalie, a historian studying the dark past of the hotel, and Ben, a professional exorcist who was drawn to the intense spiritual activity of the location. Together, we hoped to shed light on the shadows of Lament Lodge. As we set up our equipment, Natalie shared the unsettling lore of the hotel. Lament Lodge was once owned by a devil worshipper named Lord Blackwood. He held ceremonies in the basement, hoping to gain power and immortality. But something went wrong. The hotel became a magnet for tormented souls, and room 217 became especially notorious for unexplained deaths. One evening, as I was walking to room 217, a cold draft enveloped me, and a reflection of a lady in a bloodied white dress appeared in the window. She mouthed the word "leave" before vanishing. I was shaken but determined to delve deeper. Ben, sensing the rising supernatural tension, decided an exorcism was crucial to release the trapped souls. He believed that the devil worship had opened a portal, making the hotel a liminal space between our world and the next. On the night of the exorcism, we gathered in the basement. Alex and Lisa manned the cameras, capturing every eerie moment. As Ben started chanting, the room grew colder, lights flickering erratically. In a sudden blast of energy, Natalie was thrown against a wall, gasping for breath as if invisible hands were choking her. Lisa, panic evident in her eyes, screamed as she pointed towards a corner. There, we saw a dark, shadowy figure, its eyes glowing a fiery red. It whispered in a voice that felt like nails on a chalkboard, "You cannot free them." The ordeal seemed endless. Ben, drenched in sweat, continued his incantations with renewed fervor. With a final deafening roar, a rush of wind blew out our candles, plunging us into darkness. And then, silence. When we rekindled the lights, Ben lay motionless on the floor, his life force drained. Natalie, still traumatized, whispered about seeing countless spirits ascend, finally freed. The exorcism had worked, but at a terrible cost. We left Lament Lodge the next day, our hearts heavy with the loss of Ben but grateful for the souls we'd helped liberate. The lodge, though quieter, still stood as a grim reminder of its dark past. Today, as I recall those haunting events, the memories are as vivid as if they happened yesterday. Lament Lodge was eventually demolished, but the land on which it stood remains untouched, a silent testament to the souls that once roamed its halls. They say on some nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint echoes of the past, forever imprinted in the annals of time. Story number 6. The Echoes of Ashford Manor. The year 2006 will forever be etched in my memory, a haunting tapestry of unexplained events and unspeakable horrors. My friend Danny and I, hungry for adventure and intrigued by the paranormal, found ourselves driving to Ashford Manor, a hotel in a forgotten suburb rumored to be ground zero for ghostly activity. As we settled in, we met Serena, an investigative journalist who had been tracing a series of enigmatic suicides associated with the hotel. She introduced us to Damien, a medium who felt a strong connection to the restless spirits of Ashford, and Amelia, an archaeologist who believed the hotel was constructed atop ancient sacrificial grounds. Danny and I began by setting up our equipment. During our initial exploration, Amelia showed us cryptic symbols she had found etched into the hotel's foundation. These symbols, she said, are linked to ancient devil worship. They may be the key to understanding the hotel's hauntings. Late one night, as I was walking the eerie halls, I felt a soft, mournful lullaby in the air. Following the sound, I found myself outside room 309. The door slowly creaked open, revealing a ghostly figure of a mother rocking a phantom baby. Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with sorrow, and she vanished, leaving the chilling melody hanging in the air. Damien, sensing the potency of the spirits, gathered us for a séance in the grand ballroom. As we joined hands, the room's temperature dropped drastically. the chandelier above began to sway violently. Serena, looking terrified, whispered about feeling an unseen presence clutching her neck. Amid the chaos, Damien's voice took on a demonic tone. "This ground is cursed," he growled, eyes rolling back. "The rituals performed here anchored souls, turning this place into a purgatory." Amelia, piecing the puzzle together, realized that the devil worship rituals from ancient times had cursed the ground, drawing in tormented souls and becoming a magnet for suicides and unexplained deaths. Realizing the depth of the horror, we decided an exorcism was essential to break the curse and free the trapped souls. With Damien leading, we prepared for the ritual in room 309, where the spiritual activity was most potent. I remember the sheer terror of that night. As the exorcism began, the walls seemed to bleed, and demonic laughter echoed throughout. Serena, possessed, levitated, her eyes black as coal. Amelia, fighting through her fear, began chanting in ancient tongues, trying to counteract the dark forces. The climax was cataclysmic. A blinding light filled the room, followed by an earth-shattering roar. Then, an eerie calm settled. Serena lay unconscious but alive. Damien, however, was gone, leaving behind only his charred pendant. We left Ashford Manor the next day, the weight of what we had experienced heavy on our shoulders. The hotel was later sealed off, its dark legacy too dangerous to revisit. Today, as I recall those events, I can still hear the haunting lullaby from room 309, a ghostly reminder of the cursed grounds of Ashford Manor and the souls that were once trapped within its walls. Story number 7. The Shadows of Wiltshire Inn. In 2007, an obsession took root in my mind, a dark intrigue that led me down a path I'll never forget. My childhood friend, James, and I were lured by tales of Wiltshire Inn, an infamous hotel in a quiet U.S. suburb. Stories of suicides, unexplained deaths, and eerie hauntings circulated, turning it into the stuff of legends. Shortly after arriving, we encountered Rebecca, a paranormal researcher, and Ethan, an anthropology professor. They revealed chilling details about the inn's history. It was once a haven for a clandestine devil worship cult. With their expertise, James and I hoped to uncover the mysteries of Wiltshire Inn. One evening, while walking the hotel's gloomy corridors, I stumbled upon a sealed room. A cold breeze swirled around, even though the windows were shut. As I approached, a cacophony of whispered voices reached my ears, and I saw ghostly apparitions reenacting a satanic ritual. Ethan, using his anthropological background, deciphered some old manuscripts we found hidden in the hotel. These rituals, he said, were aimed at achieving immortality, but something went terribly wrong. The cultists inadvertently summoned malevolent entities. As days passed, the supernatural occurrences escalated. Rebecca was drawn to the hotel's attic, where she discovered remnants of an altar. As she touched it, she was possessed, her eyes turning a milky white. She spoke in a demonic voice, recounting the hotel's many suicides and the tormented souls trapped within its walls. Realizing the gravity of the situation, we decided to perform an exorcism. We chose the sealed room, the epicenter of the paranormal activity. Ethan, relying on his knowledge of ancient rituals, led the ceremony, while James and I assisted, holding on to Rebecca, who thrashed violently. As Ethan chanted, the room's temperature plummeted. The walls began to ooze a dark substance, and an overpowering stench filled the air. The malevolent spirits, in their fury, lifted Rebecca off the ground, causing her to levitate. It felt as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. Suddenly, a blinding light shot through the room, emanating from an old amulet that James had found earlier. The spirits, drawn to the amulet, were trapped within, their haunting cries echoing as they were confined. The aftermath was a blur. Rebecca, once the spirits were expelled, lay exhausted but alive. Ethan, however, was deeply affected, his once bright eyes now haunted, a shadow of his former self. We left Wiltshire with heavy hearts, vowing never to return. The hotel was eventually abandoned and became part of the town's haunted folklore. Today, as I recount the events of that fateful year, the memories send shivers down my spine. The sinister echoes of Wiltshire, its tragic past, and the souls that once roamed its hallways serve as a chilling reminder of the thin line between our world and the supernatural. Story number 8. The Vanishing of Hollow Creek. 2008 was the year I lost a part of myself, a fragment forever trapped in the haunting tales of Hollow Creek Hotel. I remember driving to the infamous location with my best friends, Laura and Jake. Our thirst for thrills and tales of the supernatural had led us to this forsaken place, nestled in a quiet suburb that time seemed to forget. Shortly after our arrival, we met Simon, a historian who was researching the dark history of the hotel, and Elise, a psychic sensitive to spiritual energies. They warned us of the intense paranormal activity in the hotel, stemming from a sinister past involving devil worship and a series of unexplained suicides. One evening, as we were exploring the decrepit hallways, Elise suddenly stopped, her face pale. She described seeing ghostly figures reenacting a chilling ritual. Their faces were contorted in anguish, forever replaying their own demise. Simon later shared a discovery, hidden journals detailing the rituals performed by a long-gone cult seeking power and immortality. They believed that by offering souls to dark entities, they would gain unholy abilities, he whispered, a hint of dread in his voice. During our stay, Laura began acting strangely. She'd wander off, drawn to the hotel's basement, where she'd chant in an unrecognizable language. The once vibrant Laura was now a distant, hollow version of herself. Desperate, Jake, Elise, Simon, and I agreed that an exorcism was necessary to save our friend. The night of the exorcism was one I will never forget. As Elise began her chants, the room grew colder, shadows dancing on the walls. Laura, her voice deep and monstrous, recounted the numerous suicides and tragic events that plagued the hotel. As the exorcism intensified, Jake and Simon struggled to hold Laura down. I remember the sheer terror in their eyes as objects flew around the room, windows shattering. Elise, with unmatched determination, continued her chants, calling upon benevolent spirits to aid us. Suddenly, a blinding white light filled the room. The deafening cries of the trapped souls echoed around us. When the chaos subsided, Laura lay motionless on the floor, her breathing shallow but stable. Elise, however, was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving only her necklace behind. We left Hollow Creek Hotel at dawn, the weight of our experiences pressing heavily upon our souls. The hotel, too dangerous and unpredictable, was later condemned and closed off to the public. Today, as I remember those harrowing events, the memories remain as vivid as ever. The unspeakable horrors of Hollow Creek Hotel and the brave souls who ventured into its depths are a chilling testament to the unknown mysteries of our world. Story number 9. Echoes of Edgewater Hotel. In 2009, my friend Liam and I set off on a summer road trip, and the legends surrounding Edgewater Hotel in a remote U.S. suburb lured us in like moths to a flame. I still remember the gravel crunching beneath our tires as we pulled up to the grand yet decayed facade of the hotel. We weren't alone in our curiosity. At the hotel, we met Alicia, a young journalist, Dr. Nathan, a parapsychologist, and Luna, an urban explorer with a YouTube channel dedicated to abandoned places. They too had heard tales of devil worship, unexplained deaths, and a malevolent force that ensnared visitors. One night, while Luna was live streaming, her viewers noticed shadowy figures in the background. These figures whispered ghastly tales of a sinister cult that had once used the hotel as a base. According to the echoes of the past, members of this cult performed dark rituals, hoping to gain favor with malevolent entities. The more time we spent there, the clearer the remnants of these ceremonies became. In one room, the walls bore ancient symbols, and the air was thick with despair. Alicia found an old diary that documented the frequent mysterious disappearances, the screams echoing in the hallways, and chilling accounts of guests found dead with expressions of pure terror. Dr. Nathan's equipment continuously detected anomalous energy spikes, especially around Liam. My friends started behaving erratically, often found murmuring cryptic phrases in corners. Recognizing the signs of possession, Dr. Nathan proposed conducting an exorcism. One evening, under a blood-red moon, we gathered in the ritual room. With every chant, the temperature dropped. Liam, bound to a chair, began speaking in tongues, his voice echoing the pain and horror of countless souls. As Dr. Nathan persisted with the rites, dark figures manifested around us, their faces twisted in agony and anger. Suddenly, a powerful force knocked us off our feet. Luna's camera captured orbs and apparitions, evidence of the intense paranormal activity. As the climax of the exorcism approached, the spirits grew more violent, shattering windows and hurling objects. With a final, guttural scream from Liam, a blinding light enveloped the room. When our vision cleared, Liam was unconscious, but the malevolent presence was gone. Luna, however, was nowhere to be found, her camera left abandoned on the floor, still recording. We left the Edgewater Hotel the next day, the trauma of the experience forever etched in our minds. The hotel remains a testament to the dangerous allure of the unknown. Luna was never seen again, but her last recording serves as a chilling warning to those daring to venture into the dark recesses of the past. Story number 10. Whispers of Waverly Mansion. In 2010, I had embarked on a journey with my best friend, Sarah, a relentless enthusiast for all things supernatural. Our travels brought us to Waverly Mansion, a forgotten hotel in a sleepy suburb, tainted by tales of devil worship, suicides, and hauntings. Soon after our arrival, we encountered two others drawn by the mansion's dark allure: Felix, a skeptic historian, and Clara, a medium who claimed she could communicate with spirits. Together, we decided to unravel the mansion's secrets. The first night, while I was exploring the attic, I stumbled upon a chest filled with old photographs. Faces, forever captured in sepia, gazed back at me, their eyes echoing sadness and terror. Sarah, on the other hand, discovered a room in the basement, its floor marked by a large pentagram surrounded by candles. The haunting smell of old incense lingered in the air. On our second night, Clara decided to conduct a seance. As we sat in a circle, hands joined, the room grew icy cold. The chandelier above us began to sway, and whispered voices filled the air. Clara's voice grew distant as she established a connection with a spirit. It introduced itself as Madeline, a former guest of the hotel. Through choked sobs, Madeline recounted the unspeakable horrors she witnessed: guests driven mad, devilish ceremonies in the basement, and an entity that preyed on the souls of the living. I was skeptical until Felix and I found an old guest registry, its pages documenting a disturbing pattern: guests who checked in but never checked out. There were annotations beside several names: sacrificed, converted, taken. Our final night was the most terrifying. Sarah and I decided to set up cameras in hopes of capturing any paranormal activity. As midnight approached, we heard a haunting lullaby echoing through the halls. Following the sound, we were led to a room where shadows danced on the walls, forming grotesque, writhing shapes. Suddenly, Sarah was lifted off the ground, her body contorted in pain. Felix, paralyzed by fear, watched as an unseen force began choking Sarah. Clara, sensing the malevolent presence, began reciting an exorcism chant. The room trembled, mirrors shattered, and Sarah was thrown against the wall. As dawn broke, the entity retreated, and Waverly Mansion grew silent once more. Clara, exhausted from the ordeal, warned us that the evil wasn't gone, merely dormant. We left the mansion with more questions than answers. The footage we captured serves as chilling proof of the otherworldly horrors that reside in Waverly Mansion. Some places are best left forgotten, and some memories too haunting to relive. Story number 11. The unforgiving shadows of Sutton Inn. That was the year that changed everything for me. Back then, my lifelong friends, Mia and Ryan, and I decided to investigate the mysteries surrounding the long-abandoned Sutton Inn. Situated in an isolated suburb, this hotel had gained a morbid reputation. Locals whispered that it wasn't just haunted, but cursed. Mia, ever the adventurer, had roped in two specialists for our investigation, Desmond, an anthropologist with a penchant for occult histories, and Elise, a reputed psychic. The first day was mainly exploration. Sutton Inn was a massive structure, its walls echoing with silence, and rooms tainted with the melancholy of bygone years. While I was photographing an old ballroom, a cold breeze enveloped me, and for a split second, I heard what sounded like a child's giggle. Elise, sensing my unease, remarked that many spirits roamed the hotel, some benign, others malevolent. That evening, Mia and Ryan set up recording equipment while Desmond uncovered an old diary in the library. It belonged to the inn's last manager, who spoke of a series of unexplained suicides and sinister rituals that took place within its walls. He wrote of a cult that believed in harnessing the spirits of the tormented for power. The last entry, written in shaky handwriting, read, "They are here. The shadows. They are hungry." As night fell, things grew increasingly eerie. Elise, sensing a powerful entity, insisted we conduct a seance. As we all sat in a circle, the room plunged into an unnatural cold. Then, the walls began to bleed shadows. Whispered voices murmured tales of sorrow and agony. Suddenly, Elise convulsed violently, her eyes rolling back. She shrieked in a voice not her own, recounting wicked ceremonies and souls trapped in eternal torment. Panicking, Desmond started chanting an ancient protection spell, but it was too late. Ryan screamed as invisible hands gripped his throat. Mia and I, frozen in horror, could only watch as our dear friend was lifted, choking, into the air. From the depths of my terror, I remembered a ritual to banish malevolent spirits. With Desmond's help, we began reciting it, hoping to free Elise and Ryan from the malevolent grip. The hotel shook, windows shattered, and the air was filled with anguished cries. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. Elise collapsed, drained but alive. Ryan, sadly, wasn't as lucky. We found his lifeless body in the ballroom, a look of sheer terror on his face. We left Sutton Inn at dawn, hearts heavy with loss and the weight of the unspeakable horrors we'd witnessed. The suburb remains quiet, its secret evil locked within the walls of the cursed inn. And though we've tried to move on, the shadows of that night still haunt our dreams. Story number 12. Echoes from Room 217. 2012, the year that haunts my very core. My best friend, Liam, and I had a penchant for exploring the mysterious, the creepy, and the forgotten. That's how we stumbled upon the Lanchester Hotel, a forgotten gem in a quiet suburb. Liam and I were joined by a trio of specialists: Helena, a journalist who'd been covering unsolved mysteries for years, Professor David, a historian with a focus on cults, and Nadia, a young medium with a gift for communicating with the other side. Our first walk through the Lanchester felt like a journey back in time. Grand chandeliers covered in dust, faded portraits of unknown people, and every corner echoing with silence. Nadia was the first to break that silence. "There's a heaviness here," she whispered, looking pale. The evening took a sinister turn when Helena shared articles about the hotel's dark history. The Lanchester, it seemed, wasn't just haunted. It was a beacon for those seeking a dark exit from this world. Room 217, in particular, was infamous for unexplained deaths. Driven by curiosity, I found myself standing outside Room 217. The door creaked open to reveal a room untouched by time. As I ventured in, a cold breeze sent shivers down my spine, and I felt an unseen presence. Suddenly, the room was filled with whispers of past occupants. Shadows played on the walls, telling tales of heartbreak and despair. Nadia entered, her eyes fixed on a dark corner. "He's here," she murmured, "the one who promises them release." As the night deepened, David discovered ancient scriptures pointing towards devil worship. The Lanchester was more than a hotel. It was a temple where desperate souls were lured by a dark entity, promising them peace in exchange for their souls. Liam, ever the brave one, decided to confront this entity. We formed a circle, with Nadia leading a seance. The room turned ice cold. Then, in a voice dripping with malice, the entity spoke through Nadia. "You are all mine," it hissed. Professor David, drawing on his knowledge of rituals, began an exorcism chant. The entity, feeling threatened, unleashed its wrath. Windows shattered, doors slammed, and Helena was dragged across the floor by unseen hands. The climax of our terrifying ordeal came when Liam was lifted off the ground, choking, while Nadia, still possessed, laughed maniacally. In a final desperate move, David threw sacred salt at Nadia, forcing the entity out. The Lanchester returned to its deafening silence. But the ordeal wasn't without its cost. Helena, traumatized by the events, left journalism, and Nadia, once vibrant, was now a shadow of herself. Liam and I left that suburb, vowing never to return. But the memories of room 217 and its dark inhabitant remain, reminding us of the thin line between the living and the damned. Story number 13. Whispers of Ashwood Inn. A year I'll never forget, no matter how desperately I try. Ashwood Inn, tucked away in an overlooked suburb, was an old, forgotten hotel with more secrets than rooms. It began innocently enough. I, Alex, and my girlfriend, Kara, being lovers of the paranormal, decided to spend a weekend there. Alongside us were Callie, a seasoned paranormal investigator, and her boyfriend Mark, an architect who had an interest in old buildings. The first day at Ashwood was intriguing. Mark pointed out the building's unusual structure, almost as if it was designed to trap something inside. Callie's instruments, meanwhile, kept picking up strange electromagnetic fluctuations. While exploring the old ballroom, I stumbled across a faded guest book. Skimming through, a particular entry from 1953 caught my eye. "Beware the room at the end of the hall. He waits." A shiver ran down my spine, though I brushed it off as some prank from a past guest. That night, Callie set up her equipment in what we began referring to as the room at the end of the hall. It was untouched by time, the bed neatly made, a vase with long dead flowers on the table, and an unsettling portrait of a man with piercing eyes hanging on the wall. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation. As we settled in, a sudden chill enveloped the room. Callie's voice recorder started picking up faint whispers, growing louder with each passing second. "Join us," they seemed to say. Mark, curious about the history of Ashwood, discovered old blueprints hidden in the basement. They revealed a hidden chamber beneath the room we were in. What was meant to be a weekend adventure soon turned into a nightmare. Kara, usually cheerful, began acting strangely. She'd stand outside the room for hours, whispering to herself. One night, I woke up to find her missing. Frantic, Callie, Mark, and I found her in the chamber beneath the room, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. It became clear that Ashwood Inn was not merely haunted. It was a nexus for dark rituals and devil worship. The entity in the room, once a powerful leader of a cult, had been trapped there by members who feared his growing malevolence. Callie, experienced in dealing with malevolent entities, decided an exorcism was necessary. The process was harrowing. The room shook, the temperature dropped, and Kara's voice, distorted and menacing, echoed with laughter. Then, as suddenly as it started, it ended. Kara collapsed, drained but herself again. We left Ashwood Inn the next morning, the sun revealing the hotel in a new light. It was just a building, though its walls held memories of a darker time. Every so often, when the night is still and the wind whispers through the trees, memories of that weekend come flooding back. And I remember the eyes in the portrait, watching, waiting, Story number 14. The Echoes of Edgewater Hotel. In 2014, a journey that I thought would be a light-hearted exploration took a terrifying twist. The name Edgewater Hotel still sends shivers down my spine. It all began when I, Nate, an amateur filmmaker, wanted to document haunted places in suburbs across the U.S. My childhood friends, Lucy and Ryan, joined the project. For our investigation, we enlisted Eliza, a paranormal expert, and Sam, a local historian familiar with the dark tales of the Edgewater Hotel. Sam told us that Edgewater was originally known as a lavish hotel but gained a reputation as a suicide hotel. Over the decades, numerous unexplained deaths and suicides plagued its halls. Lucy, always eager for some adrenaline, proposed that we spend a night there. I remember the drive to the hotel. Trees line the quiet streets, their shadows dancing eerily under the dim street lights. The hotel loomed in the distance, a relic of the past. As we entered, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Eliza immediately sensed a presence. Her instruments, which she explained detected spirits, went haywire. While setting up cameras, Ryan found an old diary in one of the rooms. It belonged to a former hotel manager from the 1970s. The entries detailed rituals and devil worship that took place in the basement. The last entry ominously read, "They are here, and they demand a sacrifice." Eliza decided to conduct a seance in hopes of communicating with the spirits. As the candles flickered, we heard faint voices echoing through the halls, growing louder with each passing moment. "Leave or join us," they whispered menacingly. Sam, visibly shaken, shared another piece of the hotel's history. The basement was not just a place for rituals, it was a burial ground for those sacrificed. Suddenly, Lucy, who was exploring the upper floors, screamed. We found her in a trance-like state, repeating the same phrase over and over, "They won't let me go." Eliza recognized the signs. Lucy was possessed. With no time to lose, Eliza began the exorcism. The room grew cold, and Lucy's voice morphed into several others, recounting their tragic ends. The power of the ritual and the spirits overwhelmed Eliza, and she collapsed. In the chaos, Sam found a way to dispel the spirits. Using the diary, he burned it, reciting a chant to banish the malevolent forces. The hotel returned to its ominous silence. Lucy, though shaken, was back to her old self. We left Edgewater Hotel at dawn, the weight of its history heavy on our shoulders. The documentary was a success, but the memories of that night still haunt me. Whenever I pass an old hotel or hear stories of ghost towns, I'm reminded of the unspeakable horrors lurking in forgotten corners. Story number 15. The Shadows of Somerset Inn. The year was 2015. The sun was setting as I drove into the quiet town of Somerset. My best friend, Julia, sat beside me, her camera ready. Our objective was to document the paranormal activities reported at the old Somerset Inn. Guiding our exploration was Derek, a local journalist who had written extensively about the hotel. He introduced us to Hannah, an experienced psychic medium, and Mark, an historian obsessed with the dark past of Somerset Inn. The legend was that the hotel had been built on an ancient site used for devil worship and ritualistic sacrifices. Over the years, it earned its reputation as the suicide hotel due to the high number of unexplained deaths. I remember our first step inside the hotel. The air felt heavy, laden with sorrow and regret. Mark began by telling us about the most recent death, a young woman who had jumped from the top floor. No one knew why. Hannah, sensitive to energies, felt an immediate pull towards the basement. As we descended the old, creaky stairs, the temperature dropped noticeably. In the basement, there were old symbols etched into the walls, confirming the devil worship tales. Derek set up an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, session. Static filled the air before a clear voice said, "Get out." Unsettled but determined, we continued. That night, As Julia and I set up cameras in one of the rooms, the lights flickered. Through the lens, Julia saw shadowy figures moving at the end of the corridor. She gasped, showing me the footage. Clear as day, ghostly apparitions roamed the halls. Later, Hannah decided to contact the spirits. As she chanted, the room grew colder. A chilling breeze circled us, and out of the darkness, voices whispered their tales of woe. From being sacrificed to taking their own lives out of despair, the stories were harrowing. Suddenly, a powerful force overtook Julia. Her eyes rolled back, and in a deep voice, she spoke of a pact made with the devil centuries ago. The spirits were bound to the hotel, forever trapped and tormented. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Derek, Mark, and I held Julia down while Hannah began an urgent exorcism. The room trembled, windows shattered, and ghostly screams echoed. Hours felt like minutes. When it was over, Julia lay exhausted but herself again. The spirits were finally at peace. As we left Somerset in the next morning, the weight of its history bore down on us. The documentary went on to gain significant attention, but the memories of that night remain a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurks in the forgotten corners of our world.